All right, good morning, everyone. My name's Kevin Gover. I'm the director of the museum here. You should all be aware that we are both webcasting right now and taking photographs, so don't do anything you don't want recorded for posterity, or it's going to end up on our website. As I say, I'm Kevin Gover. I'm the director of the museum. We appreciate you taking a few minutes with us today to discuss the National Native American Veterans Memorial. This is a project that was assigned to us a couple of years ago by the Congress, and it's an assignment, obviously, that we welcome and are anxious to execute fully. Let's see if I can make this work. No? All right. You all know that Native people have served in the armed forces in every conflict since the Revolution, and that they served in greater numbers per capita than any other segment of the American population. The problem is that most Americans don't know this, and certainly from looking at the memorials and other tributes on the National Mall and throughout Washington, there would be no place for them to learn that. However, during World War II, over 44,000 American Indians and Alaska Natives served. We all know the stories of the different CodeTalkers. Some 31 tribes, I believe, provided CodeTalkers for the war effort. Even today, there are 31,000 American Indian and Alaska Native people on active duty, and more than 140,000 veterans self-identify as American Indian or Alaska Native. One of the things we've done with our research is to find where the largest populations of Native American veterans would be. It's no surprise where they would be. The largest number in Oklahoma, California, and Arizona, followed closely by places like New Mexico and Washington. But throughout Indian country, we see a very strong representation of Native American veterans. The veterans are both men and women, and are in all 5 of the different services and have been throughout the existence of those services. So in 2013, Congress authorized the establishment of the memorial. Actually, they first did so in 1994. And my guess is that most of you don't know that. I didn't know it until we began doing some of the research on the bill that Congress was working on to authorize the memorial again. So long story short, there were some problems with the original legislation. For example, we couldn't have built it outside. It would have had to be inside our building here. Second, while we were prohibited from using our federal funds to build a memorial, and still are, we were also prohibited from raising private money to build it. So we really had no options in terms of financing the project. Congress has removed that restriction. We cannot use our federal funds, but we can raise private funds. And so the plan is that we will finance the project in that way. So here are the grounds of the NMAI. And this is the Independence Street side. That's where most of the traffic is. This is the Jefferson Drive side. That's over here, right outside our window. As we've been talking to, I'll just tell you, as I initially imagined the memorial, one of the places that seemed obvious to me were these 2 parcels here. They're pretty good size. They've got some nice landscaping, but it's natural landscaping, so it wouldn't involve a formal garden or anything, and we would have had some space, basically, to tell the story. As we've been out talking to veterans, though, they've made clear that they would prefer that it be on this side of the museum. Along this water feature, a river walk, which is under repair right now. That's why it's such a mess out there. But the idea that they've expressed is they want a more contemplative space. They want in a way, a more private space, one that's not noisy, one that doesn't have all this traffic, and doesn't have cars parked just a few feet away from it. So that seems like the likely location of the memorial. We have an advisory committee of Native American veterans, about 24 people representing all 5 services, both men and women, and Gold Star family is represented as well. The co-chairs are Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell, whom I know many of you know, and Chickasaw Nation Lieutenant Governor Jefferson Keel, who I know most of you know as well. The committee actually includes Micheline Bigman, who is a veteran and the founder of the Native American Women Warriors. And they have been great supporters of our efforts so far. We began in January a series of community consultations. We expect to be doing this for through about next summer. We've been to a number of places, but we have a few more to get to. So this is the schedule as we've carried it out so far. We began in the Choctaw Nation in January. We've been to Oklahoma, North Carolina, New England, Spokane, the meeting we're having here today. Next week we'll be at Gila River in California. 2 weeks after that we'll be in Fairbanks, Alaska. And then we have 3 others scheduled through the remainder of the year in North Carolina and California. So by the time all is said and done, we expect to have done at least 24, maybe as many as 30 of these. There are several places we've not yet been. We haven't been to New Mexico. We haven't gotten to the Navajo Nation yet. We haven't been enough places in the Northern Plains. We've been to Montana, but we need to get to North and South Dakota as well. We certainly need to get to the Pacific Northwest. So we still have quite a travel schedule in front of us to fulfill our consultation obligation. In the meantime, we have created a traveling banner exhibition. It's actually being printed now and will become available for the first time on Veterans Day in November. And the San Manuel Band financed the creation of this. Our curator is Herman Viola, who is curator emeritus here at the Smithsonian and the author of this book, Warriors in Uniform. That will become available at the end of this year and early next year. We'll have 5 copies of it. We want to distribute it throughout Indian country to get it to as many different places as we can over the coming set of years. So if you have it's not a large exhibition, it would easily fit in this room. It's a series of banners, I think 16, that comes to about 100 feet of wall space that you need, and they're freestanding. You can set them up and take them down in a matter of an hour or so. So they should be able to fit into any tribal library, tribal office, tribal museum throughout the country. Our project timeline is as follows. As I said, we're in the consultation phase now. Next year, hopefully about this time, we'll do the call for design proposals. It will be an open competition. It will be a blind competition so that we won't know who is submitting any particular design. It will be evaluated by a jury of art experts and others who are expert in this sort of undertaking. They will make recommendations to the museum, and the museum will make a final selection probably about a little less than 2 years from now. That will give us 2 years to construct, and then we hope to unveil the memorial on Veterans Day in 2020, so about 4 years from now. We've not yet begun the sort of general fundraising campaign, but we have put in a few specific proposals to different companies, tribes, and other institutions. And we're also getting sort of voluntary contributions are beginning to come in. We will probably start the general campaign for the memorial later this year, before the end of the year. We will be holding an inauguration ball on January 20th, regardless of who wins the election. and the proceeds will benefit this project. We'd like to raise in the neighborhood of $1 million in that one event. We think that the total project budget is going to be north of $15 million. We're going to have to raise all of that money as we go, and we have to have it in hand before we can begin construction of the memorial. So we're going to need a lot of support from not just the tribes, but as you can see, we're also approaching different companies, all sorts of people who engage in what we'd call patriotic philanthropy, supporters who help, for example, rebuild the Washington Monument after the earthquake and that sort of thing. But still, it's a daunting sum of money, and it's going to require a lot of help and a lot of support. We also want very much, the $1 million donor is going to be essential, but it's every bit as important to me that every single tribe in the country feel that this is their project, that this is their memorial. And so I'm much less interested in the amount that each tribe is able to contribute as I am that each tribe contribute and feel that this is their project, that they have a voice and a place in the memorial. So as we've been going out and talking to groups of veterans in different parts of the country, we are asking them for their thoughts on what this memorial should be about. All that the Congress says is it's to educate people about the service of Native Americans in the armed forces of the United States. So that gives us some guidance, but it also gives us a lot of room to interpret just what that means and how we should tell what is, after all, a complex and poignant, complicated, tragic, heroic story, and to try to do that with a monument that's not going to be all that big. So there'll be other elements of the project. There's a research element. We want to do installations inside the museum where people can come in and find information about Native American service, but also be able to look up information about individual veterans. Now, the only way we're going to be able to assemble that material is with the assistance of the tribes. Many of the tribes have excellent rosters of veterans, and we'll be working with them to help really populate the interactive display that we're going to do here inside the museum. Because the point of all of this is to educate. The point of all this is to make sure that more and more and more Americans know of this patriotic tradition that has emerged of Native American service in the military. So I'm going to stop talking there and just invite any questions or comments you all may have. I want to hear from the veterans in particular about what you want this monument, this memorial to be, and the kinds of ideas that you would like to see captured in this memorial. So the floor is open for questions or comments. Yes, sir.
Yeah, my name is Gregorio Gotama. I'm a Marine Corps veteran, Kickapoo Tribe of Oklahoma, Texas, and Mexico. Just out of curiosity, you said that the memorial wasn't going to be that big. Is that what you said? Exactly how big is it?
Well, we don't know. Let's back up. We only have so much space. And so it's not going to be very big compared to the Vietnam Wall or to the World War II memorial.
Oh, yes, of course.
So that's, whoops, I passed it. There we go. So if we install it somewhere over here, it's just hard to know how much of that space is really going to be usable and how deep it can be, because that as you see, the landscaping is fairly shallow there. But it's going to depend on the design. Whatever the design needs to be effective, that's the space we're going to try to give it.
So it's going to be outside?
It's going to be outside.
Oh, I guess
Yes.
I misheard you. I thought you said they said it had to be inside.
They did before, and that's why it didn't get built. Okay. And so now they've said you can put it on the outside.
All right, wonderful.
Yes?
Hi, I'm Juanita Mullen. I'm Air Force retired with the
Yes. Yeah, and we're not going to, I don't think we'll specify exactly how much we have. We'll tell them the exact dimensions of the space, of this, that is there. It doesn't mean they need to use all of it. And we're really hoping, frankly, that some artist is going to come up with some brilliant artist thing where they don't use, where they're able to use less space than we're imagining. But we'll see. We don't want to limit them and say it can only be this wide. We're going to say, here's the space we have. Tell us what you can do with it. Yeah. Oh, okay, yes. And when you have a question or comment, if you'd use the mics so they can hear us on the webcast. There are probably thousands of people watching us at this very moment. Anyone else? Surely you have some questions. If you don't, I'm just going to keep talking and you'll regret it.
I got it.
Yes. Could you?
One of, and you mentioned that you're gonna have to raise like $1 million. Now, I was looking at some of the options that you're going through. Do you plan on going through maybe like putting it in the CFC, the Combined Federal Campaign?
I don't know if it's CFC eligible. I guess we should find out. The Combined Federal Campaign is where federal employees here in the Washington area, it's basically a United Way campaign where feds contribute through the so-called CFC, the Combined Federal Campaign, and we can designate the charities that we want the gifts to go to. So we will check and see if we can use the CFC. The Smithsonian in general does not, and I can't remember the exact reason why we're not allowed to, but we only have a couple of eligible programs here. So we'll find out. We're going to do most of this directly, though. I mean, we're going to be buying lists and sending mail and more mail and emails and every other way there is to raise money. We're going to be doing this, and we really do want thousands and thousands of individual donors. And I'll tell you why. Every memorial in Washington becomes controversial at some point. Nobody can create a design that everybody approves of. And the people who make decisions about these memorials quite often have much less at stake than the people who were involved in the creation of the memorials. And our only defense, because the museum has no political muscle, the Smithsonian doesn't really have any political muscle, and the only way that we'll be able to prevail if we find ourselves in the center of controversy is knowing that we have the support of the Native American veteran community behind us. And if we do, we become pretty hard to push around. Because that's sort of the moral trump card, is what the Native veterans want, is what has to happen here. Yes, ma'am.
Vernee Berner, President, CEO for the Alaska Native Health Board. As stated earlier during the VA consultation, veterans, both Native and non-Native, hold a very special status for our people. So this is something that I could see garnering the support. I'm wondering if this presentation will be available, since you are webcasting this, if we are able to share the information through our newsletters and such, and be able to reference back to this presentation so that our folks can learn more about it. We are just getting informed about it, so the questions we have are a little bit perhaps broad.
Sure.
And as this process moves forward, we'll definitely be having questions.
When is it we expect the website to be up and in full flag? Is it tomorrow?
No. The November 11th.
Okay.
Microsite.
Yeah.
November 11th.
And
Webcast will be available tomorrow.
okay, so this webcast will be available on the YouTube channel? Yes? Yes. And then we'll have the microsite up by Veterans Day. And so there'll be more. You'll also see on the microsite a version of our exhibition called Patriot Nations.
And the PowerPoint, is that a standalone document that will be up with the YouTube webcast?
Yes. Mark says yes, so it must be true. Yes, and we appreciate, anything you can do to raise awareness. We will be in Alaska. We'll be in Fairbanks for AFN. We'll come back next spring to hit Juneau and what's the other one? Anchorage. We also have a representative on the advisory committee. Colonel Wayne Don is on the advisory committee. So feel free to reach out to us in any of those ways, through Colonel Don, through the website. We have an email address for comments on this memorial as well, and we do want people to use all of those to reach out to us. It's kind of hard because we have no idea what it's going to look like, and so I know you're probably sitting there going, "No, what?" And here's how it gets worse. Everybody then develops their own idea of what it ought to look like, and no two of them will be the same. And so somehow we're going to have to find a way to sort through all of that and convince people of the idea first, and then once we finally do have a design, we can say, this is what you're supporting, and that'll be easier, I think, than just sort of talking about it in the abstract. Marshall?
Couple of things. In this design, we've heard different things that people would like to see in that design. One of the things I'd like to see in that design is we don't have any concept of what this will be or anything, but I would kind of like to see those CodeTalkers somehow fit into that design. And maybe all the way back to the scouts, the tribes that had scouts fit into it. And that's just a couple of thoughts, and I know we get things from all over, and how do you fit all of them into one thing? It's gonna be tough when it comes down to choosing. But to date, how much money has been raised?
Oh, maybe $500,000?
And we're looking for a total of what?
15.
Okay, let me
Plus.
take this out of my pocket.
You got the rest?
You want 100 or 50?
Yeah, right.
Okay,
In
that's
20s,
just a
unmarked
couple.
bills.
That's just a couple of things that I wanted to throw in there and wanted to see, and how much did you say per tribe, if every tribe wanted to pitch in? You could raise that 15? How much would it come
Well,
down?
there's 568 federally recognized tribes. 15 million divided by 568 is 25,000 or so.
And that's, I know for some tribes that might be a lot,
Yeah.
but there's some tribes that make you pick up on some of the smaller tribes.
I agree with that, and we will organize ourselves in a way where we're reaching out to every tribe and giving every tribe an opportunity to participate at the level that they're comfortable with. And I do think some other tribes will make up for some of the tribes that can't afford a larger gift. And we want individuals, both veterans, their families, and their friends, to be giving to the memorial. We want Indians and non-Indians to support this. I believe certainly that practically every veteran in the country served with a Native person and knows it. And if we can find them and reach them, that they'd be willing to give us a few dollars in honor of the Native veteran that they served with. So I think there's a huge potential for support, but we want everyone to feel like this belongs to them.
Yeah, and the family members, every family has somebody that's in the service or
Yeah.
was in the service. And we're getting a bigger, I don't even know how to phrase it, but more veterans now coming back, more people serving, and more pride than there was 30 years ago. So there's all that possibility of more people donating. I just wanted to throw that little bit in.
The memorial has to address all eras, all services, all tribes. And, you know, that's why we have artists. I don't know how you do that. But I'm sure somebody out there is going to come up with some brilliant, beautiful thing that captures all of that. And as I think about it, I even think, you know, at first it seems impossible, and then I think, no, it's really not. You know, that's, there are some universal ideas that people can grasp that would do it. So, we'll see. Yes, sir.
Yeah, Kevin. Good morning. Jonathan Nez from the Navajo Nation, Vice President. Yeah, that's going to be something. That's a one size, one item fits all kind of a monument for all of our Native veterans out there. Well, the question I had was, since this is going to be the first outside monument here for the museum, is there well, I guess there is always a possibility of Congress passing another legislation to say we want to include another monument somewhere there. I don't know if there's a master plan developed just in case that, you know, we want to do another type of monument for, you know, let's say maybe our chiefs. You know, that's really something that we need to also recognize, but they're not, I don't know if they're considered veterans, but there are warriors in our history. Now, I don't know if there will be a specific monument that would really identify all tribes. Maybe there'll be a symbol. So if that were to happen, I'm assuming that there's going to be something inside the museum, sort of like the treaty room, where you change exhibits out for our Native veterans. And that would be something a component to have.
Yeah.
In addition to just the outside national monument. But we are looking forward to you all's visit, and I think you said Navajo, so come out to Navajo.
We intend to.
Okay.
We've had a couple of failed attempts to reach out, but we'll be there.
Yeah.
We're thinking next spring.
And you know, along the lines of the CodeTalkers, I don't know if we'll get uniformal support by all tribes, because I don't think not all tribes have CodeTalkers. But for Navajo, we have been really recognizing those remaining CodeTalkers, and I'm sure that is something they would like to see before their journey home. And you know, that's just also, I just wanted to piggyback off of tribal leader here as well. So thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate the lawmaker for having that vision for our Native Americans, veterans throughout the United States. So thanks, Kevin.
Sure. Well, credit where it's due. It was Senator Akaka, who's Native Hawaiian, who really revived the legislation in 2012 and 2013. Senator Schatz from Hawaii picked it up after Senator Akaka retired. And Congressman Markwayne Mullen from Oklahoma sponsored it. And between Senator Schatz and Congressman Mullen, it navigated its way through Congress. We were kind of surprised because one day it had just passed, and we just never saw it coming. But we were glad it did. The monument, the memorial itself can't be comprehensive. It can't tell the whole story, especially to somebody who doesn't know the story, right? It'll just, it can be moving, it can be beautiful, but it won't necessarily convey the enormity of this story. And so that will have to be done through a number of other activities. We do plan an interactive installation where people can come in and learn about the whole of the story, but also learn about individual veterans. We think, although the memorial is to be to veterans of the Armed Forces of the United States, it's hard to imagine a veterans memorial that doesn't in some way acknowledge the warriors and leaders who fought against the United States or who resisted the United States as well. And, once again, we turn to the artist fine hand to see if they can find a way to do that. Because it's one of the things that I pick up from my conversations with veterans is they don't really see a difference in those avenues of service.
Just a quick follow-up question, Kevin. After all these information, public hearings you all have, is there going to be an official request for artwork or proposal for this monument, or is that ongoing? I'm sure there's some ideas that are coming forth already on what
Yeah.
some of our veterans see to be this memorial.
Well,
Monument.
there will be a very formal process for the memorial itself.
So that would be a governmental RFP.
Right, and a call for a request for design proposals. These things have been done many times here in Washington, and there's a method to it all.
Is there any timeline you could give us?
Well, we think that if we're able to issue the call for proposals about this time next year, that we can then have a final design selected the following summer of 2018. And because even once the designs are submitted, you want to pick a group of finalists, ask them to give you more information about their design, maybe even create a maquette, a small version of the memorial so that we can evaluate it more carefully, and then you make a final selection of the design. And then our troubles really begin because we have to have the money to start building, and it'll be a race against time at that point. So we want to do as much of that between now and the time the design is selected so that when the time comes, we can turn our total energy to raising the funds for the memorial. Yes.
Recognizing that there's a formal process to the design element, is there going to be a concerted effort to make sure that, if possible, that Native American artists and architects are engaged in this process?
Absolutely. My hope is we will not know who has submitted which design. We will be at great pains to make sure that every Native American artist and architect in the country is aware of this competition. My thought is this story is so complex, but it's so well known in Indian country that the likelihood is that it's going to be a Native person who is best able to capture what it is we're trying to get across. But we won't know until the design is selected, and it will be a blind competition. So but certainly every Native American artist will have their opportunity to compete for it. One of the things we think about a lot is a lot of tribes would like, of course, to be, to have the opportunity to specially honor their veterans, even at this memorial. And so we think about different ways or different formats you might be able to do that. including something that's sort of interchangeable, where the Navajo Nation might have its installation there for some period of time, and then the Pawnee Nation, and then the whichever tribes. But we haven't quite figured out what that might look like. We don't think we want that thing where everybody has their name etched in a brick. If for no other reason, then that means people are walking on tribal names, and we don't like that idea very much. So something to think about. If you come up with a brilliant idea, please share it with us, because we're a little stumped about how to do that. Yes.
You mentioned that all areas, all services, and all tribes has to be represented in this memorial. Now, as a female veteran, now if somebody comes up with a statue, is it going to be a requirement to represent both male and female veterans?
Yes. I should have said that. Yes, absolutely. Anyone else? Sure, come on up. This is Dr. Herman Viola, who is our lead consultant on the project.
Well, thank you for your attention and for your interest in this program. A key component of this project is to collect the oral histories of veterans. We want to ensure that for posterity, these stories are recorded. I began my career at the National Archives with the records of the Bureau of Indian Affairs. And, you know, those records go back 200 years. Well, let's hope this goes on for another 500 years. And we're going to have a digital wall, as Kevin said. And ideally, when you come in and you're going to look for Grandpa's name, you punch the board and you'll get a picture if it's there. You get a little history of that person. And so everyone will really be able to see the breadth and extent of this project. And the reality, of course, is that Indian people, as you know, are very humble and don't brag. And that's why a lot of their contributions over time just have not surfaced. Just for example, yesterday, got a phone call from the librarian of the Iowa tribe in Oklahoma, and she said, well, I've got this friend whose brother was in World War II, and he's got a diary. The family has the diary. And she said, now they're thinking it'd be nice to make sure it's safe for posterity, and the diaries are fragile. So to make a long story short, I called this woman, she's 78 years old, and she said, oh, I'm so glad to hear from you, and it's been such a burden on our family. And I said, well, your librarian said she'd digitize it. Well, I'll get it over there this afternoon. And then she said, you know, my brother is on the war memorial wall in World War II memorial in D.C. I've never been able to see that. And she said, now, is there a chance you could go over there and take a picture of his name on that wall and send it to me? And I said, sure, we'll make a trade. I'll get your diary and you'll get the picture. And so this is the kind of thing. But when I talked with the Iowa librarian, she said, I said, no, you get in touch with other people. And she said, well, she said, you know, she said, a lot of people don't want anybody to know what they did in the service. And I mean, just to give you a classic example, I did this book, Warriors in Uniform. I worked on that book for 35 years. And Ben Nighthorse Campbell was the one who really encouraged me to do it. And so, you know, there's a moccasin telegraph and people put me in touch with other people. And I got people on the phone and they'd start talking to me and I'd record the conversation. And several people said, we're so grateful, the family said this, we're so grateful you made that phone call. Mom was in the kitchen listening. For example, this was Vernon Soodle, Kiowa, World War II, Vietnam. She said, we had never heard any of the stories he told you. And now we know what he did, and he's now dead, but at least it's recorded. And that's why this is so important, that we get these stories so the families know what happened, and the reality is so the American people, the world knows. I go around the country a lot with Kevin, and I speak to school groups, you'd be amazed at how little the American people know about the contribution of Indians. They all think they've only seen cowboy movies and Indians are our enemies. And the idea that they'd have been on our side, and they've been in uniform since the Revolution, every conflict. And the largest ethnic group represented in the military, male and female, and yet you go out in that mall right now and start tapping people on the shoulder, and they say, oh, is that right? They've heard of Hira Hayes, and that's about it. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, yes.
Aloha mai kako, Caitlin. I'm Wohi from the office of Senator Brian Schatz. I noticed the timeline of community outreach. Are there any plans to do consultations in Hawaii?
There are, in January. In January, right after the inauguration, we're sending a team over. They're working with Senator Akaka now, and we'll be sure that they're in touch with your office as well. In the back, last question? No? Okay, well, our time is just about up, so thank you, everyone, for being here. If you have questions, please do write to us at the email address on the little postcards that have been handed out. Seriously, anything, any ideas, any questions, anything you have to say about this, we want to hear it. And we'll be compiling this material for the foreseeable future. If we haven't been to your part of the country, we will be. We haven't been up to your neck of the woods yet, and we will. When you hear that we're coming, I hope you'll tell people they should come and hear about this project and share their ideas about it. So thank you very much.